Hey guys, welcome to the second part of the video covering the features of organisms. Today we're going to be looking at the supplemental section of the syllabus as opposed to the last video where we looked at the core components. So last video we covered the knowledge of the 5 kingdoms that an organism can be categorized under, and specifically we looked at the subcategories and the features under the animal kingdom specifically. So if you're unfamiliar with these, I suggest that you watch the previous video before continuing on with this one. So first of all, today we're going to be covering the aspects of the plant kingdom, which only has 2 big components. First of all is the fern, and second of all is the flowering plants. And what Cambridge expects you to know is just the differences between these 2 main groups and the features. So I think there are 4 main differences that you should be aware of actually between these 2 groups, but I don't think there's any need to know any further than this. So in ferns, pollens don't exist, but in flowering plants, pollens do exist, and that's how that's their mode of reproduction. Seeds, once again, ferns do not have them, but flowering plants do, which is within the fruits they produce. Flowers obviously are not present in the ferns, but are present in flowering plants. And water is a requirement for ferns to fertilize, but not a requirement for the fertilization of flowering plants. So yeah, that's about it. Nothing really too difficult to understand here. It's just a matter of memorizing the table. So moving on, we talked about the 5 main kingdoms that an organism can be categorized under. So it was bacteria, protoctists, fungi, plants, and animals. What you need to be able to do is know the features of each of these 5 kingdoms and be able to, for a given organism, put it in the correct kingdom. So we'll just be going through 4 different types of features of each kingdom. So first of all, the cell type. Now what I mean by cell type is a cell can either be a prokaryote and a eukaryote. Now never mind the fancy language, prokaryote really just means that it has no nucleus. And nucleus is usually the component of a cell that carries the genetic factor such as DNA or RNA or things like that. Now for prokaryotes, they don't have a nucleus, but it doesn't mean to say they don't have any genetic material. They do, it's just not contained in a space called the nucleus. Whereas eukaryotes, all of these ones here, they do have a nucleus, and that's where they keep their genetic material in the cell. So first of all, the cell type of a bacteria is a prokaryote, and that is the only prokaryote out of the 5 kingdoms. So the only kingdom whose cells don't actually have a nucleus is the bacteria. Everything else does. The cell structure, generally we're talking about the material of the cell wall, if they do have a cell wall, that is for bacteria, they've got a cell wall that is made of a substance called peptidoglycan. And I know this is a difficult word to pronounce and memorize, but it is definitely handy to keep in mind. And protoctists, they do have cell walls also, and it's made of cellulose. Fungi, they also have cell walls, and it's made of chitin. And plants, they also have cell walls that are made of cellulose. Now you may be familiar with this already, but animals, they do not have cell walls at all. So out of the 5, 4 of them have cell walls. 2 of them, the plant kingdom and the protoctist kingdom, has cell walls made of cellulose, and the fungi has cell walls made of chitin, and the bacteria has a cell wall made of peptidoglycan. So another aspect is how many cells do these organisms in each kingdom have. So some organisms can be unicellular, meaning they're just the whole organism is just made of one single cell. So that cell is the organism itself, whereas In most cases, like in animals or plants or fungi, they are multicellular, meaning the organisms are made of multiple millions and millions of cells combined, just like us. So the bacteria kingdom, they are unicellular. Protoctists, most of the time they're unicellular, but for your course, I just say that all of them are unicellular just to avoid any confusion. The fungi, plant, and animal kingdom, in contrast, all of these organisms are multicellular, meaning they have many cells that make up the organism. And the last feature of the kingdom here is the mode of nutrition. Now, I've put this in green because I don't exactly think it's very important. I guess it will help to know, but it's not really that essential. So, anyways, the mode of nutrition for an organism can either be an autotroph or an heterotroph. Now, an autotroph just means that this organism has the capability to make food for itself. So, in other words, they can photosynthesize and whatnot. Heterotroph means they gain nutrients by essentially eating other organisms. Okay, so bacteria, depending on the certain organism, it can either be an autotroph, meaning they can make food for themselves, or an heterotroph, where they've got to eat another organism to get the nutrients out of them. Protoctists, same thing here. It can either be an autotroph or a heterotroph, depending on the specific cell. Fungi is always heterotroph. Plants are obviously autotrophs because they have the ability to photosynthesize, and you don't exactly go seeing other plants eat other organisms anyways, for nutrition purposes. And also finally, animals are heterotrophs. We as animals get nutrition by eating other organisms, and that's why it makes us a heterotroph. So I made a little flowchart here just for the sake of easily classifying an organism into its right kingdom. So the first question that you need to ask yourself is, does it have a nucleus? If it does, then you move on to the rest of the chart. If it does not, then it has to be a bacteria, because the bacteria is the only kingdom that does not have a nucleus. So if it doesn't, it'd be a bacteria. If it does, then you move on. So does it have a cell wall? If it doesn't, then it's an animal. If it does, then you once again move on and you try to describe, okay, well, what is the cell wall made of? So if it's made of a substance called chitin, then you've got a fungi cell. If it's made of cellulose, then it can either be two things. It can either be a plant or a protoctist. And the only thing that really differentiates between these two is whether or not it's a unicellular organism or a multicellular organism. And now you know that plants are always multicellular, so if it's a multicellular organism, you can pretty confidently assume that it's a plant. If not, then you can assume that it's a protoctist. So I suggest that you memorize this chart and just practice using it for the sake of preparing for your exams or your tests. And finally, the last part of the syllabus wants you to understand the features of viruses. Now, viruses are extremely small. To compare it with the bacteria, it's 100 times smaller. So you can only imagine how small these things really are. Now, it's pretty controversial, and it's, some people say that some people say that viruses are a living organism, some people say they don't, but the only characteristic of life that viruses actually show is reproduction. Now, we said that Mrs. Grin, you need to have all those characteristics for an organism to be labeled as a living organism. Now, in that respect, viruses are not a living organism, but that is another topic entirely. But for now, you just need to know what it looks like and the different components of the cell. So a virus, in the very middle of the cell, it has its genetic components. So that can either be a DNA or an RNA, represented by this green strand here, and it's usually just a single strand. It's enclosed in something called a caspid, which is a protein layer, and outside has a coat that protects the inside of the virus. And essentially that's really all you need to know for your course. So thank you very much. The next topic will be covering cell structure and organization, and I hope you keep in tune for that. See ya.